In a world of virtual rivalries,
Yeah! I'm the man!
petty vengeance takes a dangerous turn
This was just basically a big game to him.
with real-world consequences.
Yeah, I left some bombs at my high school and they're gonna blow up in 15 minutes. Me and my friend both have guns.
That's one of the most horrific things the police officer could respond to is an active shooter situation.
Police take desperate measures to bring down a mysterious target.
Hands in the air! Down, 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 down! Go, go, go!
I sent a provocative picture of myself.
In an online battle where failure carries the ultimate price.
I just wish that we were able to get to him a little bit quicker.
Abandoned by his mother and following the death of his father, 22-year-old Tyler Barris lives with his grandmother, Wendy Gregory.
Where do you think you're going?
There's a big game coming on. I gotta get back inside.
You're not going anywhere, Tyler, until you finish tidying that up.
Tyler was a very bright young man.
Happy now?
He was someone who sought purpose and meaning in his life, just like any normal adolescent. One of the most tragic elements of Tyler's young life is the fact that his grandmother essentially let Tyler be raised by his Xbox.
After dropping out of a junior high school for the gifted, unemployed Tyler Barris spends his days glued to his computer.
Tyler had pretty serious aspirations of being a world elite player and perhaps making a living at it someday. And Tyler played pretty much around the clock for a long time to attain these skills.
But Tyler's dedication to gaming takes its toll.
Tyler spent so many critical years of adolescence completely zeroed in this online realm. It warped the way Tyler dealt with the world around him.
Boom! Oh my God, boy, you just got served.
Despite his efforts, Tyler is failing to make the grade as a pro gamer. As his dream slips away, Tyler takes his frustration out on rival players.
You punk ass! You think you know me?
Tyler spent a lot of time online trash-talking to opponents. And the talk that these players engage in can become quite aggressive, quite belligerent.
Woo! Yeah! I am the man!
In the gaming world, bad-mouthing opponents can have serious consequences in the real world, as Tyler soon discovers.
Hands in the air! Down, 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 down! Go, 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 go! Fire her! Where's the body? The what? The body. I gotta call someone shot their brother.
I don't have a brother.
You better not be messing with me.
I'm not messing with you, but somebody else is. I just got swatted.
Swatted.
Swatting is a tactic that gamers used to punish their rivals.
It's something that gamers do. I must have made somebody mad enough, they called 911 and got you guys all the way down here just to scare me.
Gamers use swatting as a way to intimidate opponents and settle disputes, with videos of the incidents often recorded and posted online.
Essentially, after a dispute, one of the people engaged in the argument will call up the police, and they will tell some fantastic, frightening lie that will compel very, very heavily armed, militarized police to address what they think is a potentially lethal situation.
Did you find anything? Up. You could have been shot.
Tyler, in the real world, didn't really have much power. All of his relationships were online. But in that moment, Tyler thought, this is so cool, that someone with a mere phone call was able to marshal this huge, heavily armed force and direct them however they wanted.
Fascinated by the idea of swatting, Tyler plans a revenge attack of his own.
Tyler made a promise to himself that he would do whatever it took to become a master swatter. I believe Tyler was attracted to swatting because he could essentially turn police officers into video game characters. For Tyler, there was a tremendous sense of power in that idea.
Tyler commits himself to learn everything there is to know about swatting.
He very quickly learned how to use virtual private networks, how to use temporary phone numbers to cloak his identity and location. He started writing scripts that he knew would be convincing for police departments.
Tyler chooses one of his most bitter rivals as the target of his first swatting attack, and uses an app to create a false, untraceable telephone number to hide where he's calling from.
911, what's your emergency?
I've shot my father and he's not breathing. My mom's here. She's really scared.
Tyler's call tricks the police into sending a heavily armed SWAT unit to his target's house.
Swattings create incredibly dangerous situations. Everyone is on edge while carrying instruments of death in their hands.
Tyler watches his hoax call play out using his rival's live webcam stream.
Tyler found it thrilling to carry out these swattings. He could hijack the law enforcement system, and that entails him having a great deal of power. And that rush of power can become addictive.
After his first SWAT, Tyler is hooked.
Tyler had no idea that this would result in a story that would capture the world's attention.
911, what's your emergency?
Online gamer Tyler Barris has become hooked on the thrill of making hoax 911 calls, a practice known as swatting.
The problem with addiction is that once you become addicted to something, the buzz you get from it is something you crave more and more, and you have to increase your aberrant behavior to pursue that buzz. His grandmother, she didn't know how to talk to Tyler. She didn't understand his world. And this actually led over time to some real confrontations.
You know something? I bet I could have that whole new studio cleared out if I wanted to.
What you talking about?
You know, the new show you're always watching? I bet you I could have it shut down. Just like that.
The next day, Tyler Barris proves a hoax call can have real-world consequences, as his bomb threat is reported on local news network ABC 23 in Los Angeles.
It's unusual for those who report the news to become the news. Well, that's what happened today to the staff at KABC in Southern California. The station had to do its 4 o'clock newscast from a lawn down the street after a bomb threat forced everyone in that building to evacuate.
One call was all it took.
Tyler took great pride in this, the fact that he had interrupted his grandmother's favorite news program. It was a tremendous rush of power for him, this escalation of his practice of phoning in bomb threats.
With their relationship already at breaking point, Tyler's action is one step too far for Wendy.
Please tell me you didn't do it, Tyler.
Do what?
The bomb threats. It's been all over the news.
So what if I did? What's the big deal? It's just a little bit of fun, and nobody got hurt. You just don't get it, do you?
Tyler!
Not now, I'm busy!
Horrified by Tyler's role in the news station's evacuation, his grandmother reports him to the authorities.
The police arrested Tyler for making the bomb threat and began an investigation into other bomb threats and swattings he might have been responsible for.
Tyler pleads no contest to 2 felony counts of making a false bomb threat and is sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in the Los Angeles County Jail. After serving just over half his sentence, Tyler is released. With nowhere else to go, he returns to his grandmother's house.
After Tyler's release from jail, he was unable to return to his grandmother's house because of the protective order she'd taken out against him.
Nana! Nana! Please! It's cold outside! Nana! Please! Let me in!
Tyler had lost his home. He'd lost the last of his family members. He'd lost his real shot at any future prospects.
Tyler is forced to move into a homeless shelter in downtown Los Angeles. With no friends and family to fall back on and no internet access, Tyler is alone in the world.
For Tyler, his world was the community of fellow gaming enthusiasts that he knew online. And so he felt compelled to seek out internet access.
But a short walk from his shelter, Tyler finds what he's looking for. A public library with free Wi-Fi and computers. And he soon proves that old habits die hard.
He'd been stripped of everything during his time behind bars. It was very important that he reclaim that respect and that admiration of his peers. And the only way he saw of doing so was to get back to conducting swattings and making bomb threats.
Undeterred by his stretch in prison, Tyler uses an app that generates untraceable phone numbers to falsely call out first responders all over the country.
911, what's the emergency?
I planted bombs. They're set to go off in about 10 minutes.
Tyler, he didn't really view this as anything more than another game that he was playing.
My mom and my brother are here. They're very scared.
I'm holding hostages. If you don't get here soon, I'm gonna shoot them all.
On the flip side of this, you have scores of heavily armed police going into situations where they think people's lives are in danger.
You should get your people out now.
That's a very dangerous potential situation where people can be killed.
Emboldened, Tyler raises the stakes, putting even more lives at risk.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm gonna blow up my high school.
Beach police operator 3. Yeah, I left some bombs at my high school and they're gonna blow up in 15 minutes.
What school is it?
Arnold High.
The caller called Arnold High School directly and made the bomb threat. Then it stated there was an active shooter on scene.
Can you tell me why you're doing this?
Yeah, because I'm upset with some people. They got me mad, so now they're gonna pay for it.
You know, in this day and age, that's one of the most horrific things the police officer could respond to is an active shooter situation. So this was a deliberate action made by a punk that intended to scare a lot of people.
They're gonna detonate in 10 minutes.
"25-year-old Tyler Barris is determined to achieve online infamy by tricking first responders into action.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm gonna blow up my high school.
His latest target is a high school in Florida.
Yeah, I left some bombs at my high school and they're gonna blow up in 15 minutes.
The evacuation of Arnold High School hits locals hard and receives widespread news coverage.
Bay County Sheriff's deputies and Panama City Beach Police responded to sweep the school. Administrators first put the school on lockdown, then evacuated all teachers and students.
I'm gonna hang up now. There's only about 10 minutes left, so.
I took it personally, and all of our attention went to finding out who made that phone call.
Mendez sets out to befriend them.
So I continued to let him know how interested I was in his ability to swat people, in hopes that he will keep talking and reveal some personal information that will lead me to find out his true identity.
Within 2 hours of sending the first text, Talamantes swaps almost 50 messages with the unknown caller.
At the beginning stages, I thought he was playing me, that he knew I was a cop, and he was just, for his own self-gratification, he was just sort of trying to string me along. But as the communication went on, more on a personal level, I could tell that he was just a sad, lonely, pathetic human being, and that he really just wanted to talk to somebody.
Tyler Barris ditches his digital burner phone and directs Talamantes to his social media network.
He referred me to his Twitter site. His Twitter was Swatistic, play on swatting and autistic, I would suppose.
Talamantes replies with the Twitter handle, Jerry. Oblivious to the police investigation, Tyler continues to go after increasingly risky targets.
911, what's your emergency?
I've planted bombs in the federal building. You should get your people out now.
Tyler started to call in bomb threats against federal agencies, the FBI, the Federal Communications Commission, then watched the meeting being evacuated online. There were cameras in the meeting room.
Despite the risk, Barris openly boasts about his online acts of terror on social media.
I really couldn't believe that he was calling in bomb threats to places all around the country and bragging to me about it. I've been in those situations where I got that hot call. I've responded to a potential bomb threat, and I don't know the feeling that I had when I went there. And I absolutely felt that the more he called in these bomb threats, the likelihood of somebody getting hurt would be far higher.
With pressure mounting to catch the caller before it's too late,
You wanted to see me?
Telemantis tries a new tactic.
I needed to get him to send me a photo so I can show without a doubt that when I find him, he's the person that was making these phone calls.
I need you to help me with a case. Let me explain to you what I'd like you to do.
I could tell that he was a heterosexual male, so I felt that a female undercover would have a better chance of getting a photograph of him. So I enlisted Officer Gorman.
I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend.
The online investigation now centers on Patrol Officer Savannah Gorman.
My role in this case was to find out as much information of the suspect as possible, whether it was his name, a picture, his date of birth. We needed that information.
It's only an online relationship. I'll be Jerry, you'll be Gloria.
The Gloria-Jerry relationship was a loose boyfriend-girlfriend type of relationship.
And I know this may sound weird, but I'd like you to take a picture of yourself and send it to the guy that I'm trying to track down. You cool with that?
What kind of picture are we talking?
I was basically just going fishing. I just put 100 lines out there with 100 types of different bait, hoping that something will bite. And I knew that, you know, somebody could get hurt if he kept on doing this.
Yeah, I left some bombs at my high school and they're gonna blow up in 15 minutes.
Tyler Barris is on the rampage, tricking armed response teams into action across the U.S. Cyber investigator J.R. Telemantis has gone undercover to expose Barris before his campaign of chaos ends in disaster. He's enlisted the help of Officer Savannah Gorman in his online operation.
One of the instructions I was given by Lieutenant Telemantis was not to show my full face. So the picture was pretty much just me in a hat and like some workout clothes, but it was a frontal picture. I sent the picture in hopes to grab his attention. I got immediate response from the suspect asking if this was a joke or a trap.
He was definitely flirting with her, 100%. He was acting just like I've seen, you know, hundreds of other men online flirting with young women.
I didn't want to ask the suspect straight up what his name or his date of birth or where he was from because I was worried it would scare him away. So I started off with, hey, how old are you? Can I get a picture? The suspect was hesitant at first, but considering how arrogant and egotistical he was, I feel like he caught the bait pretty quick.
Finally, investigators have an image of their suspect.
Hey, Lieutenant. You worried now he's sending me pictures, he'll stop talking to you?
I don't think so. Feels like this guy needs as many friends as he can get. He's sending us pictures, and we got him hooked. Now we just need to reel him in. Send him another message. Ask if he has any tattoos.
Our thought process was, let's try to get as much information on him as we can, whether it be a tattoo, whether it be a favorite restaurant, whether it be a friend, a girlfriend, something that we can use to track him down.
Says he's in LA.
Guess that's a start. See if you can get him to send another picture. There might be something on it that we can use. Help narrow down his location.
The second picture the suspect sent was a little bit more personable. He was laying down on a bed and seemed as if he was lonely in some type of way.
As the case developed and Officer Gorman was able to get those photographs, it was a huge break in the case. Both of them identical. Both of them showed him to be a young man. You can see he even used his real first name, Tyler. So all these things were major developments during the investigation.
Within just 4 days of receiving the first message from Gloria, the caller has revealed his face and name. But to make an arrest, Telemantes needs to pinpoint his target's exact location in LA.
I played a lot of cards in hopes that I could tell the police department, there he is, go pick him up.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
I saw a rocket launch on TV. It was in Los Angeles area. So I decided to use that rocket launch in my investigation in hopes that it would help me find him. So I grabbed the photograph of it online. I sent it to him. And something to the effect of, I was like, wow, what's going on in California? It grabbed his attention. He went out, took a photograph of the rocket. And in the back of the photograph was the skyline of Los Angeles. And within that skyline, I was able to put him in a 1 to 2 block radius in downtown LA by comparing those images to images on Google.
We're so close. I can feel it.
I just wish that we were able to get to him a little bit quicker, because he was going to continue to do this until somebody was killed during a swatting incident.
Homeless and broke, Tyler Barris spends his days in the library, now in demand from his online followers as a swatter for hire.
Tyler, like many young people, sought love and validation. So Tyler loved the fact that people were asking for his help to conduct these operations in exchange for money.
In late December 2017, Barris is approached by a Twitter user asking to swat a rival gamer called Miracle. When Miracle notices he's being followed, he brazenly dares Barris to swat him at an address in Wichita, Kansas, some 1,400 miles from LA.
Andy was round and solid. His nickname was Snowman. That's what he looked like. That was Andy's shape.
That's inappropriate. Okay, your drink, Phil. What would you like?
Andy was this bull character that you would not imagine. The creativity and the effort that Andy would put in to his art.
I said, listen, I know.
Andy would have his son, and they would both be holding the pencil, and he would guide Aiden. He was always so calm and patient. I'm his mother, and I still am in awe of the type of father and the person that Andy had grown up to be.
Looking pretty good, boys. Come on, you. Time for bed.
Thanks, Mom.
Meanwhile in LA, Barris launches his swatting attack.
This is 911. What's going on? They were arguing and I shot him in the head and he's not breathing anymore. Okay, so what's going on right now? I'm just pointing the gun at them, making sure they stay in the closet. My mom and my little brother. Okay, is there any way you can put the gun up? No, because I already poured gasoline all over the house. I might just set it on fire. Okay, well, we don't need to do that, okay?
Barris provides the police in Wichita with the address he's been given by Miracle.
Andy was on his phone in the couch that he preferred to sleep on, texting, and I was in my room. And Andy had sent me a text, "I love you, Mom, do you need anything?"
Swatting is a stupid, ridiculous game that people are playing with other people's lives. And when you play those games, there's consequences to that.
They were arguing and I shot him in the head and he's not breathing anymore.
When Tyler Barris calls police in Wichita, saying he shot his father.
Okay, do you have any weapons on you? Yeah, I do. Handgun.
You guys very crossfire.
Armed officers surround the address he's given them.
Walk this way! Walk!
262, we got shots fired. One down at the front.
I heard that scream. I knew it was my son. It was unnatural. It was guttural. It was animalistic. It was just not right.
Barris has no idea he's been tricked into swatting a random address.
Andy had nothing to do with online gaming whatsoever. He was doing absolutely nothing wrong. Andy was an innocent victim of a swatting call. I've lost somebody that I know I could count on no matter what he was doing. It rips a hole It puts a void into you that will never, there's nothing that's going to fill this void.
Upon learning that someone had been killed as a result of his actions, Tyler Barris, in a series of Twitter posts, essentially said that he was not responsible, that he is not the person who fired the shot. The death of Andrew Finch was on the police, not on him.
I saw the news release that somebody was killed in Wichita during a swatting incident. I immediately went online and tried to communicate with my guy. And he didn't deny doing it. So I knew it was the same guy.
Lieutenant Telemontes, Panama City Beach PD. Dispatch gave me your name. Yeah, I heard about the shooting after the hoax call you got. I think I got something for you.
I called the authorities in Wichita. I told them, I think I got your guy. I sent him a photograph of the person that I identified in our case.
After the shooting, Telemontes learns that his counterparts in Wichita have been tipped off about a bomb hoax at a Los Angeles news station 2 years earlier.
The booking photo of the person arrested matched the photographs that were received, and that's when I found out it was Tyler Barris. That was the first time we were able to put a last name to him.
The day after the fatal shooting, the LAPD, armed with evidence from the month-long investigation, tracked Tyler Barris down.
When I found out Tyler Barris was arrested, it was bittersweet. I was relieved that he was taken into custody, but it's just horrible that it had to come after the death of an innocent person. Tyler Barris was not a master genius. He was not some computer guru. He was a punk with a cell phone that had an app on it that allowed him to be anonymous. Plain and simple. He was nothing special. He was a punk with a cell phone.
Tyler Barris has some accountability for making the call. But I believe the majority of the blame goes to law enforcement. For the shooter to be over 44 yards away, there were officers right at the bottom steps. They would have been in better position to see if Andy had had a gun, and I believe Andy was a victim of improper training.
Yeah, we guys are in crossfire.
It was just wrong.
Tyler Barris and 2 others are now facing federal charges in the death of an innocent man.
As the first fatal swatting incident ever prosecuted, Barris's case comes under intense media scrutiny.
A grand jury made the decision to indict not only Tyler Barris, but 2 other online gamers in his...
Tyler Barris has claimed responsibility online for almost 100 swatting incidents. Barris pleads guilty to 51 federal charges and is sentenced to 20 years in prison. Casey Viner, the person who approached Barris to make the swat, has pleaded guilty to conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Shane Gaskell, aka Miracle, the person who gave Barris Andy Finch's address, has paid $1,000 in damages and is likely to face no further legal action.
Andy is not the only victim of this swatting call. My granddaughter, Adelina Finch, whom I raised, died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound January 11th of this year. And I believe it's because of what she had.
The call came in just after midnight, a whisper buried under static, a voice that sounded like it had been waiting decades to be heard, and when the dispatcher leaned closer, straining through the crackle. The only words that came through clearly were these: "I know what happened in '79, and then the line went dead, leaving behind nothing but a hollow tone and a case file that had already gathered dust for over 40 years, a cold case stamped in fading ink. A name that once shook an entire neighborhood and then slowly dissolved into silence, the kind of silence that settles in like fog and never quite lifts, the kind that makes people lower their voices when they pass the street where it all began. New York, winter of 1979, a city that never slept but somehow still managed to miss what mattered most. Sirens cutting through the night, steam rising from subway grates, neon lights flickering against wet pavement, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a young woman disappeared without a trace. No struggle, no witnesses, no answers, just an empty apartment and a half-finished cup of coffee still warm on the table when police first stepped inside. The kind of detail that sticks, that gnaws at investigators because it means she didn't plan to leave, she didn't expect what was coming. Whatever it was, it arrived fast, silent, and final. Her name was Elena Vargas, 26, a legal assistant with no known enemies, no criminal ties, no reason to vanish, the kind of person neighbors described with the same tired words: quiet, polite, kept to herself, but beneath that ordinary surface. Detectives would later find fragments that didn't quite fit, late-night phone calls with no records, a second set of keys that opened nothing in her apartment, and a notebook filled with dates circled in red, no explanation, just a pattern that seemed deliberate, almost like a countdown. Though to what, no one could say. The morning she disappeared, the city moved on as it always does, commuters rushing, taxis honking, headlines screaming about everything except the one story that hadn't yet been discovered, and it wasn't until 2 days later that anyone realized something was wrong, a co-worker noticing her absence. A landlord complaining about unanswered knocks, and then the police, stepping into a room that felt frozen in time, untouched, undisturbed, except for one thing. The window, slightly ajar, just enough to let in the cold air, just enough to suggest that someone had come or gone without using the door. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints that didn't belong, no blood, no clear indication of violence, and yet everything about the scene felt wrong, like a stage set after the actors had already fled, leaving behind only props and unanswered questions, and as detectives began to dig. The case quickly turned from missing person to something darker, something that hinted at planning, precision, intent. Witnesses were scarce, unreliable, or simply non-existent. One neighbor claimed to hear footsteps late that night, another mentioned seeing a shadow near the building entrance, but nothing concrete, nothing that could anchor the investigation, nothing that could turn speculation into evidence. And so the case drifted, slowly, painfully, into that dangerous territory where theories multiply but answers remain out of reach. Then came the first break, small but significant, a taxi driver who came forward weeks later, saying he remembered picking up a woman matching Elena's description on the night she vanished, her voice tense, her instructions vague. Directing him to drive aimlessly through the city before finally asking to be dropped off near an industrial block on the outskirts of Manhattan, a place where streetlights flickered and warehouses stood like silent witnesses, but when police canvassed the area, they found nothing, no cameras. No leads, just more emptiness. The trail went cold faster than anyone expected, leads dried up, files piled up, and the case was eventually labeled what no investigator ever wants to admit. A cold case, unresolved, unsolved, unfinished, a story without an ending, filed away but never truly forgotten. Because in the back of every detective's mind, there was always that question, that persistent itch: what did we miss? Years turned into decades, the city changed, buildings rose and fell, people moved on, but the file remained, tucked away in a box marked 1979, reopened occasionally by fresh eyes hoping to find something the others hadn't, something hidden between the lines, but each time. The result was the same: nothing, silence, dead ends. Until now. Because that call, that single sentence whispered through static, didn't just reopen a file, it reignited something that had been dormant for far too long, and when detectives pulled the old records, when they spread the photographs across the table, when they read through the witness statements again, something felt different this time, not because the evidence had changed, but because the context had, because somewhere out there, someone had decided to speak, and in cases like this, timing is everything. The question wasn't just who made the call, it was why now, after all these years, after all this silence, what had changed, what had shifted, what had finally pushed someone to break that silence, and more importantly, could they be trusted, because in cold cases, hope can be just as dangerous as doubt. The voice on the line had been untraceable, the number blocked, the location unknown, but the message was clear enough to set everything in motion again, and as investigators began retracing steps long abandoned, they realized something chilling. There were gaps in the original investigation. Details overlooked, connections never fully explored, and in those gaps, there was room for something else to exist, something that had gone unnoticed for over 40 years. And then, buried deep within the original files, they found it, a statement taken from a witness who had never been fully identified. Someone who claimed to have seen Elena hours before she disappeared, speaking with a man near her apartment, a man described only in vague terms, average height. Dark coat, face obscured by shadow, the kind of description that could fit anyone, or no one at all, and yet, for some reason, that statement had never been followed up, never expanded, just filed away like so many other fragments. Now, suddenly, it mattered. Because what if that was the voice on the phone? What if the one piece that had been ignored all those years was the key to everything? And as the investigation reopened, as old names resurfaced and forgotten places were revisited, the city seemed to hold its breath, because some stories don't stay buried forever, some truths have a way of clawing their way back to the surface, no matter how much time has passed. And somewhere, out there in the shadows of a city that has seen too much and forgotten even more, someone was watching, someone who knew exactly what happened in 1979, someone who had kept that secret locked away for decades, and was now, finally, ready to let it out. Or perhaps, ready to control how the story ends. The tape recorder clicks on with a dull mechanical snap, the kind of sound that echoes in a quiet interrogation room, and for a moment there is nothing but breathing on the other end of the line, slow, uneven, as if the caller is measuring every second, every word. Deciding how much to give and how much to keep buried, and when the voice finally returns, it's lower now, steadier, stripped of the panic from before, but carrying something heavier, certainty, the kind that doesn't come from guessing, the kind that comes from knowing too much. I saw her that night. For words, simple, direct, but they hit like a hammer against decades of silence, and suddenly the case is no longer just a cold file, no longer just ink on paper, it's alive again, breathing, shifting, threatening to expose everything that's been hidden beneath it. And the detectives listening to that recording feel it immediately. That electric jolt, that dangerous mix of hope and dread, because a witness who waits 40 years doesn't come forward without a reason. The call is traced as far as it can go, routed through layers of dead ends, public lines, payphones that no longer exist, infrastructure that has long since been replaced, and it's as if the voice itself belongs to another time, slipping through cracks in the present, refusing to be pinned down. But one thing becomes clear almost instantly. The caller knows details that were never released to the public, details buried deep in the original reports, details only someone close to the scene could have known. That changes everything. The old witness statement is pulled again, the one that had been overlooked, half forgotten, reduced to a footnote in a case that had too many loose ends to count, and now every word is dissected, every phrase examined under a different light, because what once seemed vague now feels deliberate. What once felt incomplete now feels like it was intentionally held back, as if the witness had been afraid, or worse, silenced. Back in 1979, the officer who took that statement noted hesitation, long pauses, answers that drifted just short of clarity. But at the time, it was written off as nerves, as uncertainty, as the natural reaction of someone caught in the gravity of a missing persons case. But now, listening to the recording from the present, the pattern is unmistakable. This was someone who knew more than they were willing to say. And maybe still does. The investigation pivots, not outward, but inward, back through its own history, retracing every step, every decision, every oversight. because if something was missed, it wasn't just evidence, it was intention, and intention leaves traces, even after decades. Elena's last known movements are reconstructed again, not just as a timeline, but as a sequence of choices, each one narrowing the possibilities, each one pointing toward something, or someone. She was moving toward that night, not away from, and that realization shifts the entire narrative. Because this was never a random disappearance, never an accident, never a crime of opportunity. This was planned. Her phone records, limited as they were at the time, are revisited with modern analysis, cross-referenced with archived switchboard logs, partial data recovered from systems long thought obsolete, and slowly, painfully, a pattern begins to emerge. Repeated calls to a number that was never identified. A number that appears and disappears like a ghost, unregistered, untraceable, but persistent, always at odd hours, always brief, always just long enough to suggest conversation without revealing its content. And then there's the notebook. The one filled with circled dates, the one that never made sense, the one that sat in evidence storage for decades without explanation, now laid out again under harsh fluorescent light, each page photographed, digitized, enhanced. And what once looked random now reveals something far more unsettling, a sequence, not of dates, but of intervals, consistent gaps that suggest scheduling, meetings, or something even more structured, something that implies coordination. Who was she meeting? And why was it hidden? The voice on the tape calls again. This time, there's no hesitation. You're looking in the wrong place. The message is left on a recorded line, no attempt to conceal it, no attempt to disguise the voice, and that alone is enough to raise alarms, because anonymity had been the caller's shield, and now it's being dropped, piece by piece, replaced with something far more dangerous, confidence. Detectives respond the only way they can. They push back, publicly, releasing a statement asking the witness to come forward, to meet, to provide a formal account, but privately, the tone is different, sharper, more cautious, because this is no longer just about solving a case. It's about understanding the person who is trying to control it. And control is exactly what this feels like. The original crime scene photos are re-examined, not just for what they show, but for what they might have missed, angles adjusted, shadows analyzed, reflections enhanced, and in one frame, barely noticeable at first, something appears in the glass of the window that had been left ajar, a shape. Indistinct, blurred, but human, positioned just outside the frame, as if someone had been standing there, watching, waiting. It had always been there. They just hadn't seen it. Now, paired with the witness statement, the phone calls, the notebook, the taxi driver's account, the pieces begin to align in a way they never had before, forming something that feels less like coincidence and more like design, a pattern that stretches beyond a single night, beyond a single victim. Into something larger, something more deliberate. And then the break comes, sudden, unexpected. The kind that doesn't just move a case forward but rips it open entirely. A name surfaces. Not from the past, not from the original investigation, but from a completely unrelated case, decades later, a minor report filed in the early 2000s, a complaint that seemed insignificant at the time, involving a man seen loitering near residential buildings, watching windows, making notes. Behavior that was dismissed as suspicious but harmless, until now. Because the description matches. Not perfectly, not conclusively, but enough. Average height. Dark coat. Face often obscured. And suddenly, the shadow in the photograph doesn't feel so abstract anymore. The man had a name, an address, a record, not criminal, not violent, but present, consistent, documented in small ways that, when viewed alone, meant nothing, but when placed against the backdrop of a 40-year-old cold case, begin to form something far more troubling. Detectives track him down. Or try to. The address is outdated, the record's incomplete, and it quickly becomes clear that whoever he was, wherever he is now, he hasn't made it easy to be found, and that only deepens the mystery, because people who have nothing to hide don't disappear this completely. But someone knows where he is. Someone always does. And as the investigation tightens, as the past and present begin to collide, the voice returns one more time, not through a call, not through a recording, but through something far more deliberate, a letter, handwritten, delivered without a return address. placed where it would be found but not traced, and inside, just a single line. You're closer than you think. No signature. No explanation. Just a message that feels less like help and more like a warning. Because in cases like this, the truth doesn't just reveal itself. It resists. It twists. It hides behind people, behind time, behind fear. And sometimes, the closer you get to it, the more dangerous it becomes. Somewhere in the city, the witness is still out there, watching the investigation unfold, deciding what to reveal next, deciding how much control to maintain, and the question that now hangs over everything isn't just what happened in 1979. It's who is telling the story now. And whether they're leading investigators to the truth. Or somewhere else entirely. The letter doesn't sit in evidence for long before it starts to feel like something else entirely. Not just a message, not just a clue, but a move, deliberate, calculated, part of a sequence that no one fully understands yet, and the handwriting becomes the first battlefield, every curve. Every pressure point, every hesitation analyzed under magnification, run through databases, compared against decades of archived samples, but nothing comes back clean, nothing matches, and that absence, that void where a result should be, feels louder than any confirmation could have been. Because whoever wrote it knew how to disappear on paper. And that means this isn't their first time. The ink is recent, the paper ordinary, purchased anywhere, handled carefully, no prints, no fibers, no traceable contaminants, and yet there's something almost taunting in its simplicity, like the sender understands exactly how investigations work and is staying just one step ahead, not by luck, but by design. Meanwhile, the name that surfaced, the man from the early 2000s report, begins to take shape, not as a suspect, not yet, but as a presence, a thread that now runs through multiple points in time, faint but persistent, and detectives start pulling at it, digging through municipal records. Employment logs, rental agreements, anything that might anchor him to a fixed identity, but what they find instead is fragmentation, a life that seems to exist in pieces, addresses that don't overlap, jobs that don't last, references that lead nowhere. It's like trying to map a ghost. And yet, there are patterns. Always near residential areas. Always watching. Always leaving before anyone can ask too many questions. The behavior is consistent, almost ritualistic, and when it's laid alongside Elena's case, the alignment becomes harder to ignore, not because it proves anything, but because it suggests something far more unsettling, that this wasn't an isolated incident. That whatever happened in 1979 may have been part of something ongoing, something that slipped under the radar simply because no one was looking for it. The city archives yield more than expected. Old complaints, scattered across years, different neighborhoods, different names, but eerily similar descriptions. A man standing across the street, watching windows late at night, sometimes writing, sometimes just standing still for hours. Unnoticed until someone happened to look a little too closely, and by then, he was already gone. No arrests. No follow-ups. Nothing that ever escalated. Until now. The task force begins reconstructing his movements retroactively, stitching together sightings, reports, fragments of presence, and slowly, a map forms, not precise, not complete, but suggestive, clusters of activity that seem to orbit specific areas. And one of those clusters sits uncomfortably close to Elena's apartment building in 1979. Too close to dismiss. Too vague to confirm. And right in the middle of it all, the voice remains absent, silent after the last message, as if waiting, watching how the pieces are being arranged, deciding when to intervene again. Because this feels like a game now. And the rules aren't clear. The notebook reveals more under deeper analysis. What once looked like simple intervals now begins to align with something else. Locations, not dates, when cross-referenced with transit maps from the late 70s, bus routes, subway lines, walking distances, the circled entries correspond to points across the city. Places that Elena could have reached within specific time frames, places that, at the time, meant nothing, but now start to form a path. A route. A sequence of meetings. Or something worse. Each location is investigated, most have changed beyond recognition, buildings demolished, businesses replaced, streets renamed, but a few remain intact, frozen in architecture if not in memory, and in one of them. A warehouse near the industrial block where the taxi driver claimed to have dropped her off. Something surfaces that shifts the investigation again. A record. Old, nearly lost, buried in property transfer documents, a short-term lease signed just weeks before Elena disappeared, under a name that doesn't match anyone in the system, an alias, almost certainly, but the signature, there's something about it. Something that feels familiar when placed next to the handwriting from the letter. Not identical, but close enough to matter. The warehouse is searched again, thoroughly this time, not as a forgotten lead, but as a potential focal point, and beneath layers of dust, behind walls that have been repainted and repurposed, traces begin to emerge. Marks on the floor that don't match the current layout, scratches near door frames. Subtle, almost invisible unless you know to look, unless you're looking for signs of something that was never meant to be permanent. No definitive evidence. But enough to suggest activity. Enough to suggest presence. Enough to suggest that Elena was there. The implications ripple outward, fast, uncontrolled, because if she made it to that warehouse, if she met someone there, then everything about her disappearance changes. It becomes contained, localized, planned, and the question shifts again. Not where did she go, but what happened inside that space. And more importantly, who else was there? The witness finally breaks the silence again, but not through a call, not through a letter. This time, it's visual. A photograph. Delivered the same way as before, untraceable, left where it would be found, and when detectives lay eyes on it, the room goes still, because what it shows isn't just a clue, it's a moment frozen in time, a snapshot that shouldn't exist. Elena. Alive. Standing near the entrance of that same warehouse. The timestamp on the back, handwritten, reads the exact date of her disappearance. And she's not alone. The second figure is partially obscured, turned slightly away from the camera, face hidden in shadow, but the posture, the build, the outline, it matches the descriptions, the reports, the man who watched, the man who lingered, the man who never stayed long enough to be identified. The man who might have followed her there. Or led her. The photograph raises more questions than it answers, because it confirms what was once speculation, but it also introduces something new. Someone was there to take that picture. Someone close enough. Someone watching. And that brings everything back to the same point, the same voice, the same unseen presence that has been guiding this investigation from the shadows, revealing just enough to keep it moving, never enough to resolve it. Because if the witness had this photo all along, why wait 40 years? Why now? Theories begin to fracture. Some investigators believe the witness is trying to help, driven by guilt, by time, by the weight of something they can no longer carry, while others see something darker, something manipulative, a person who isn't just revealing the truth, but shaping it. Controlling the narrative, deciding what gets seen and what stays hidden. And both possibilities feel equally dangerous. Because in either case, the witness isn't just a bystander. They're part of this. Deeply. The city outside continues as it always does, unaware, indifferent, but inside the investigation, the air has changed, heavier now, charged with the sense that something long buried is beginning to surface, not all at once, but in pieces, fragments that don't quite fit yet, but are moving, shifting. Aligning toward something that no one is ready to see clearly. And somewhere, behind all of it, behind the letters, the calls, the photograph, there is a truth that has survived 4 decades of silence. A truth that is getting closer. And closer. And closer. The photograph doesn't just sit on the table, it dominates the room, pulling every eye toward it, bending the entire investigation around a single frozen second captured more than 4 decades ago, and the longer they stare at it, the more details begin to crawl out from the shadows. Things that weren't obvious at first glance, things that feel almost deliberate, like they were meant to be discovered slowly, piece by piece, as if whoever took it understood exactly how long it would take before anyone ever saw it again. Elena's expression is the first thing that unsettles them. Not fear. Not panic. Something else. Something quieter, harder to define, like hesitation caught mid-thought. Her body angled slightly toward the warehouse entrance, but her head turned just enough to suggest distraction, as if someone had called her name, or as if she sensed something behind her that she couldn't fully see yet. And that moment, that split-second awareness, feels more revealing than any scream ever could. Because it means she didn't know what was coming. Not completely. The second figure is enhanced again, digitally pushed beyond what the original film could clearly hold, shadows lifted, contrast sharpened, outlines refined, and while the face remains frustratingly out of reach, the posture begins to speak louder, shoulders slightly hunched, weight shifted forward. Not relaxed, not casual, but intent, focused, like someone standing at the edge of a decision already made. And then someone notices it. Not the figures. Not the warehouse. The reflection. In a narrow strip of glass along the side of the entrance, barely visible, warped by age and angle, there's another shape, faint but unmistakable once seen. A third presence, positioned behind the camera, just off frame, a silhouette holding something at chest level. Taking the picture. The room goes quiet again, but this time it's different, heavier, because the implications settle in all at once. This was never just a meeting between two people. There were three. And one of them walked away with proof. The witness is no longer just a voice, no longer just a possibility. They were there, physically present, close enough to capture that moment, close enough to see everything that followed, and that realization shifts the entire investigation into something far more complex, far more dangerous. Because now the question isn't just what happened to Elena. It's what the witness did after. Why they stayed silent. Why they kept this hidden. And why they're choosing to reveal it now. The warehouse becomes the epicenter again, not just a location, but a stage, a place where something unfolded in a way that left no immediate trace but somehow lingered long enough to be captured in fragments, and as forensic teams return. This time with tools and techniques that didn't exist in 1979, they begin peeling back layers that had long since been sealed over by time. Microscopic analysis reveals disturbances beneath the surface of the concrete floor, areas where density shifts ever so slightly, suggesting that something heavy may have been moved, or worse, buried and later removed, leaving behind only the faintest structural inconsistencies. Invisible to the naked eye but undeniable under scrutiny. No remains. No direct evidence. Just absence. And sometimes absence speaks louder than anything else. The surrounding area is re-examined with the same intensity, old saw maps, maintenance logs, forgotten access points, anything that might explain how something, or someone, could disappear without leaving a trace, and slowly, a possibility begins to take shape. One that had never been fully explored before, one that had been overlooked simply because it seemed too improbable at the time. An underground access tunnel. Sealed off years before the investigation ever began, officially decommissioned, but records show inconsistencies. Maintenance entries that don't line up, reports of unauthorized access that were never followed up, and most importantly, a connection point less than 50 meters from the warehouse itself. Close enough. Too close. The tunnel is located, its entrance hidden behind layers of infrastructure updates, forgotten by most, ignored by all, until now, and when it's finally opened, the air that escapes is stale, heavy, untouched for decades. Carrying with it the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a space, it presses against it. Inside, the walls are marked. Not graffiti. Not random. Deliberate lines, symbols, patterns that don't immediately make sense but repeat often enough to suggest intention, and among them, something even more chilling. A series of dates, scratched into the surface, not all visible at once. Scattered along the length of the tunnel like a timeline carved into stone. Some of them match the notebook. Exactly. The same intervals. The same sequence. The same path. And suddenly, the notebook isn't just a list. It's a map. The realization hits hard, because it reframes everything. Elena wasn't just meeting someone, she was following a route, one that led from the surface down into something hidden, something controlled, something that required planning, knowledge, and access that not just anyone would have. Which means the man in the photograph wasn't acting alone. He couldn't have been. The scale is too large. The coordination too precise. And that brings the investigation into territory it had never reached before, a place where the line between individual crime and something more organized begins to blur, not enough to confirm, but enough to raise questions that no one is comfortable asking out loud. The witness breaks the silence again. This time, it's different. No riddles. No warnings. Just a location. A public place, crowded, impossible to control completely, chosen deliberately, and attached to it, a time. Specific. Imminent. It's not a suggestion. It's a meeting. And for the first time since the case reopened, the power dynamic shifts, because now the investigators have something the witness hasn't controlled. Presence, the ability to confront, to observe, to finally put a face to the voice that has been guiding them through shadows. But nothing about this feels simple. Nothing about it feels safe. Surveillance is set, plainclothes officers blend into the environment, exits are monitored, every angle covered as much as possible without drawing attention, and as the appointed time approaches, tension tightens like a wire pulled too far. Because everyone knows this could go one of two ways. It could break the case wide open. Or it could vanish again. The minutes stretch. People pass. Nothing. And then. Movement. A figure enters the designated area, unremarkable at first glance, just another face in a city full of them. But there's something in the way they move, controlled, deliberate, scanning without appearing to, aware without being obvious, and the moment they pause, just slightly, just enough. Every instinct in the room sharpens at once. This is them. Or at least, this is someone who wants to be seen. But before anyone can close in, before identification can be confirmed, before a single word can be exchanged, something shifts, subtle but immediate. The figure's posture changes, their head tilts, just slightly, as if they've noticed something, or someone, and in the next second, they turn. And walk away. Not running. Not panicking. Just leaving. Like they were never meant to stay. Officers move in, too late, the crowd swallowing the figure almost instantly, pathways splitting, lines of sight breaking, and within seconds, they're gone, leaving behind nothing but the echo of what could have been the first real contact in 40 years. But they didn't leave empty-handed. Because in the exact spot where the figure had paused, something is found. Another envelope. Another message. And inside, a single photograph. Not from 1979. Recent. Taken from a distance. Grainy. But clear enough. It shows the warehouse. As it stands today. And standing near its entrance. Someone else. Watching. The game hasn't just continued. It's expanded. And whatever this is, it's no longer confined to the past. The new photograph doesn't feel like evidence, it feels like surveillance, like a message sent in real time, a reminder that whatever happened in 1979 is not just history, not just something buried and waiting to be uncovered, but something that may still be active, still moving. Still watching from just beyond the edge of visibility, and the image itself refuses to settle into anything simple, because the longer they examine it, the more it starts to shift from a clue into a warning. The warehouse looks unchanged at first glance, the same structure, the same entrance, the same angles that have now been burned into every investigator's mind. But there are subtle differences, things that only stand out when compared side by side with the older photograph, the wear on the doorframe. The discoloration along the lower wall, the faint outline of something that had once been removed and covered over, like a scar left behind after something was torn out. But it's the figure in the frame that holds everything in place. Standing at a distance. Facing the building. Not moving. Not interacting. Just watching. The posture is wrong in a way that's hard to articulate, too still, too controlled, like someone holding position rather than simply being present, and even though the face is partially obscured again, hidden beneath shadow and angle, there's something disturbingly familiar about the silhouette. Something that echoes through the earlier photograph, through the witness statements, through decades of fragmented descriptions. The same build. The same stance. The same absence of identity. And that raises a possibility no one wants to say out loud. What if he never left? The timestamp on the digital file confirms it was taken recently, within days, which means whoever captured it was there, physically, close enough to observe, close enough to document, and that brings everything back to the same unavoidable center. The witness is still operating, still close. Still orchestrating the flow of information with precision that suggests planning, patience, and control. But now there's something else layered into it. Escalation. Because this is no longer about revealing the past. This is about demonstrating presence in the present. The warehouse is locked down immediately, perimeter expanded, surveillance increased, every inch of the surrounding area monitored with a level of intensity it has never seen before, and for a brief moment, it feels like control has shifted back to the investigators. Like they're finally in a position to force something into the open. But that moment doesn't last. Because control was never really theirs. Inside the building, a deeper search begins, not just along the surface but beneath it, into structural blueprints, utility systems, hidden compartments, anything that could explain how this place continues to act as a focal point after all these years. And what they find this time doesn't just suggest past activity. It suggests recent use. Dust disturbed in patterns too consistent to be accidental. Footprints partial, incomplete, but fresh enough to register under the right conditions. A faint metallic scent in the air that doesn't belong to age or decay. And then, a sound. Subtle. Brief. Gone almost as soon as it registers, but enough to freeze the entire team in place, because it doesn't come from outside, doesn't echo from the upper levels. It comes from below. The tunnel. The same sealed passage that had been reopened, the same underground artery that had once connected fragments of a story no one fully understood, now breathing again with the suggestion that it's not as abandoned as it seemed. They move carefully, controlled, every step deliberate, descending into a space that feels less like a structure and more like a memory that refuses to stay buried, and as they go deeper, the markings on the walls become more frequent, more concentrated. Less like scattered symbols and more like something organized, almost coded, repeating patterns that stretch along the length of the tunnel like a language waiting to be understood. And then they find it. A section of wall that doesn't match the rest. Smoother. Newer. Concealed, but not perfectly. And behind it, a cavity. Not large. Not obvious. But intentional. Inside, there's no body, no direct evidence of violence, nothing that would immediately close the case, but what they do find changes everything again. Objects. Personal. Preserved. A watch. Stopped. Set to a time that matches the last known window of Elena's movements. A scarf. Identified almost instantly from old photographs. And something else. Something that doesn't belong to her. A small notebook. Different from the one found in her apartment. This one is filled. Every page. Dense with writing, symbols, dates, locations, patterns that mirror and expand upon what had been found before, but this time it's not fragmented. It's complete. Or at least, it looks like it is. The implications hit hard and fast, because this isn't just a record of what happened. It's a system. A structure. Something that extends beyond a single victim, beyond a single event, something that suggests repetition, planning, continuity across time, and suddenly the cold case doesn't feel cold at all. It feels ongoing. The notebook is secured, analyzed immediately, every page digitized, cross-referenced, translated where possible, and what begins to emerge is deeply unsettling. A network of locations, some known, some long forgotten, all connected by the same intervals, the same routes. The same logic that had guided Elena's final movements. And her name appears only once. Not at the end. Not at the beginning. But somewhere in the middle. Which means she wasn't the first. And she wasn't the last. The room tightens around that realization, because it transforms the entire case from a single unresolved disappearance into something far larger, something that may have gone unnoticed simply because no one had ever connected the pieces before, because no one had ever seen the full picture. Until now. And even now, it's incomplete. Because one question refuses to settle. Who wrote the notebook? The handwriting is analyzed, compared against the letter, the warehouse lease, any known samples that might align, and the result comes back fragmented. Similarities exist, but inconsistencies remain, enough to suggest that more than one person may have contributed. Or that the same person has been changing, adapting, evolving their own patterns over time. Which leads to something even more disturbing. This wasn't static. This was alive. The witness breaks their silence again, But this time there's no distance, no abstraction, no hidden delivery, just a direct message sent through a channel that guarantees it will be seen immediately, a digital footprint that appears and disappears almost instantly, leaving behind only the words themselves. You're reading it wrong. No elaboration. No explanation. Just a correction. And that single line fractures the investigation again, because it implies something critical, that everything uncovered so far, every connection made, every conclusion drawn, may be incomplete, or worse, misinterpreted. The notebook isn't just a record. It's something else. Something that hasn't been understood yet. And the person who does understand it is still out there, watching, guiding, controlling the pace. Because every time the investigators move closer, every time they think they found a stable point, something shifts, something new emerges, something that forces them to question everything they thought they knew, and that pattern, that constant reorientation, starts to feel intentional. Like they're being led. Not to the truth, but through it. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface of a city that never truly forgets, the echoes of 1979 are no longer fading. They're getting louder, closer, and far more dangerous than anyone expected. The words don't leave the room, they linger, echoing in the silence that follows, pressing into every surface, every file, every mind trying to make sense of something that no longer behaves like a case, but like a system reacting to being observed, shifting shape each time it's touched. And the message, "You're reading it wrong," doesn't feel like a correction. It feels like a warning wrapped in precision, like someone watching from just outside the frame, adjusting the narrative one move at a time. The notebook is pulled apart again, not physically, but conceptually, stripped of assumptions, every pattern re-evaluated from the ground up, and what once looked like a timeline, a sequence of events, begins to unravel into something far less linear, because the spacing between entries, the repetition of symbols, the way certain locations are revisited, it doesn't behave like memory. It behaves like instruction. That realization lands slowly, then all at once, because if the notebook isn't documenting what happened, then it might be outlining what was supposed to happen, a framework rather than a record, something designed to guide movement, to dictate timing, to orchestrate behavior across space and time without ever needing direct communication. A blueprint. And Elena's name sitting in the middle of it no longer feels like a marker of an ending. It feels like a position in a sequence. The implications fracture everything open again, because it suggests continuity, repetition, structure that spans beyond a single incident, beyond a single perpetrator, into something that could persist without ever revealing its full shape, something that doesn't rely on one person, but on a system that can be followed, passed on, interpreted. And that raises a question that cuts deeper than any before it. Who else followed it? The tunnel markings take on new meaning under that lens, no longer random scratches or symbolic noise, but echoes of the same structure, fragments of the same language carved into concrete instead of paper, and when overlaid with the notebook's contents, the alignment becomes undeniable. The same symbols, the same sequences, repeated across different mediums, reinforcing each other like layers of encryption. This wasn't hidden. It was encoded. And now that it's being read differently, the city itself begins to shift, familiar places taking on unfamiliar weight, intersections becoming nodes, buildings becoming markers, routes becoming something more deliberate, more controlled. Like the entire landscape has been quietly mapped into something else entirely. Investigators begin following one of the sequences in real time, cautiously, deliberately, retracing a path that may not have been walked in decades, or may have been walked far more recently than anyone wants to believe, and each step along that path feels wrong in a way that's hard to articulate. Not dangerous in an obvious sense, but precise, too precise, like moving through a space that has already been measured, anticipated. The route leads away from the warehouse, through back streets, across transit lines, into areas that don't connect in any obvious way, and yet the timing holds, the spacing matches, the intervals align exactly as they do in the notebook, as if whoever designed this understood not just geography, but movement itself. And then it stops. Abruptly. At a building that doesn't stand out, doesn't demand attention, doesn't carry history in any visible way, just another structure in a city full of them, and yet the sequence ends here, or pauses here, because in this system, nothing feels truly final. Inside, the building reveals nothing unusual at first glance, tenants unaware, routines uninterrupted, but beneath that surface, subtle irregularities begin to emerge. Locked doors that shouldn't be locked, maintenance records that don't align with occupancy. Areas of the structure that don't appear on official blueprints, small inconsistencies that, on their own, would mean nothing, but together form a pattern that's becoming impossible to ignore. A hidden room is discovered behind a reinforced wall, not large, not elaborate, but intentional, designed to exist without being noticed, and inside it, the air feels the same as the tunnel, stale, contained, untouched by time in a way that suggests control rather than abandonment. There are no bodies. No obvious signs of violence. But there are traces. Impressions in the floor. Marks on the walls. Faint outlines where objects once were. And most importantly, another symbol. Carved deeper than the others. More deliberate. More central. It matches the one that appears most frequently in the notebook, the one that seems to anchor everything else, and now, seeing it here, in a place that was never part of the original investigation, confirms what has been building beneath the surface all along. This isn't isolated. It never was. The witness returns again, but this time not with a message, not with an object, but with presence, not seen directly, not confirmed, but felt, because surveillance catches something at the edge of the frame, a figure appearing just long enough to be noticed. Just long enough to confirm that someone is there, observing the observers, tracking the investigation as closely as the investigation is tracking the case. The roles are blurring. Hunter and witness. Observer and participant. And the balance between them is shifting. Attempts to follow the figure fail again, not because of speed, not because of chaos, but because of anticipation, because whoever this is, they know how these movements work, they understand the patterns of pursuit, the blind spots, the delays, the margins where visibility breaks down. And they move through those margins with precision that feels practiced. Learned. Repeated. The notebook reveals another layer when viewed through this new lens. Certain entries that had seemed redundant now stand out, not as repetition, but as reinforcement, instructions repeated for clarity, or perhaps for emphasis, and among them, one sequence appears more frequently than any other. Looping back on itself, revisiting the same points, the same path, over and over again. A cycle. And cycles imply continuation. Which means whatever this is, it might still be happening. Right now. The realization doesn't come with panic, it comes with something colder, something heavier, because panic suggests uncertainty, and this feels like the opposite, like stepping into something that has always been there, just out of view, operating quietly, consistently, without needing attention. Until now. And now that it's been seen, even partially, even imperfectly, it's reacting. Adapting. Shifting. The witness sends one more message, brief, almost clinical in its tone, stripped of any ambiguity. It wasn't about her. That line cuts deeper than anything else so far, because it strips Elena of the center, removes her from the role the investigation has built around her, and forces a perspective that is far more unsettling. If it wasn't about her, then what was it about? And more importantly, who was it really for? The case, once anchored in a single disappearance, now feels unmoored, drifting into something wider, something harder to define, where individuals become points within a structure rather than the focus of it. And the idea that Elena may have been just one part of something larger settles in with a weight that refuses to lift. Because if she was part of a sequence, then there are others. Some known. Some lost. Some never even reported. And somewhere within that sequence, within that system, within that blueprint that continues to reveal itself piece by piece, there is a center, a point of origin, something or someone that holds it all together. The investigation isn't just reopening a cold case anymore. It's stepping into something that was never meant to be found. And the deeper they go, the clearer one thing becomes. They're not the first to follow this path. And they may not be the last. The sentence doesn't fade, It embeds itself. It wasn't about her, looping through every layer of the investigation like a fault line running beneath everything they thought they understood, and once it settles, nothing holds its original shape anymore, not the timeline, not the motive. Not even the identity of the victim, because if Elena Vargas was never the center, then everything built around her begins to collapse inward, revealing gaps that had always been there, just hidden by the assumption that this was a single, isolated act. Now it feels like something else entirely. The notebook is no longer treated as evidence of a crime, but as a manual, something that instructs rather than records, and when analysts begin isolating the most repeated sequences, stripping away everything that appears once or twice, focusing only on what persists, a core structure begins to emerge, not random, not chaotic, but stable, like a spine running through layers of variation, and that spine points not to people, not to names, but to points, specific places, specific times, specific conditions. It's not tracking victims. It's tracking alignment. The word surfaces quietly at first, in a side note, a passing observation, but it spreads quickly because it fits too well to ignore: alignment between movement and location, between timing and access, between presence and opportunity. And suddenly the system begins to feel less like a pattern of crime and more like a framework designed to create moments where something can happen, something controlled, something repeatable. And that raises the possibility no one wants to fully articulate. What if the person matters less than the moment? The building discovered in the last sequence is mapped against the others, layered with the warehouse, the tunnel, the scattered locations from the notebook, and when overlaid, a geometry appears, subtle but consistent. Lines connecting points across the city in a way that doesn't follow roads or districts, but something else, something more abstract, almost like coordinates in a system that isn't immediately visible. It forms a shape. Incomplete. But deliberate. And at its center, nothing. Or at least, nothing obvious. Which makes it the most important point of all. The investigation pivots again, this time toward that empty center, because in systems like this, the absence is rarely accidental, it's usually protected, concealed not by walls or locks, but by irrelevance, by blending into the background so completely that no one ever thinks to look there. And when they finally do, when they strip away assumptions and follow the geometry instead of the narrative, the center resolves into a location that had been overlooked for decades. A public structure. Constantly in use. Constantly ignored. A transit hub that has existed, unchanged in function, since before 1979, a place where movement never stops, where people pass through without staying, without noticing, without remembering. Perfect. Because nothing lingers there. Nothing draws attention. And yet everything passes through it. The site is observed first, not entered, because by now the pattern is clear, every direct move is anticipated, every obvious action accounted for, and so they wait, watching the flow, the rhythm, the timing of movement, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, something begins to stand out. Not a person. A behavior. A pause where there shouldn't be one. A delay in motion that doesn't match the surrounding pattern. Someone standing just slightly too long, not enough to be suspicious to anyone passing by, but enough to register when viewed through the lens of alignment, and once it's seen, it appears again, in a different place, the pattern doesn't break, it tightens. Pulling everything inward toward a point no one can yet see clearly, and the deeper the investigation goes, the more the city begins to feel less like a setting and more like a structure layered over something older, something intentional. Something that has been quietly guiding movement for decades without ever revealing itself fully, and now that it's being mapped, even imperfectly, the illusion of randomness is collapsing. The sequences from the notebook are no longer treated as isolated paths, they're overlaid, stacked, compared, and when viewed together, something emerges that no single route could reveal on its own, a network, dense and interconnected, stretching across boroughs, across time. Linking places that should have no connection and yet align with a precision that feels engineered rather than discovered. And at the center of that network, there is a void. Not empty, not missing, but deliberately unmarked, a space that the sequences orbit without ever touching directly, a location implied by absence rather than presence, and that absence becomes the next target, because in a system this controlled, what isn't shown often matters more than what is. Investigators begin narrowing it down, triangulating positions, calculating intersections, stripping away noise until only the most consistent alignments remain, and slowly, almost reluctantly, the center begins to take shape, not as a single point, but as a cluster. An area where multiple paths converge without ever explicitly ending. A place designed not to stand out. A place meant to be overlooked. When they finally arrive, it doesn't feel like a revelation. It feels wrong. Too ordinary. Too quiet. A block that has existed for decades without drawing attention, buildings that have changed hands too often, ownership records that blur instead of clarify, tenants who come and go without leaving much behind, and yet beneath that surface, the same inconsistencies appear again, sealed spaces. Undocumented modifications, structural anomalies that mirror what was found before. Another hidden layer. Another controlled space. And inside it, nothing obvious. No objects. No markings. No immediate evidence of use. But the air is different. Still. Heavy. Like a room that has been waiting. The absence here feels louder than anywhere else, because this is the center, or at least a version of it, and instead of answers, it offers something far more unsettling, a sense that whatever this system was designed for, whatever it has been sustaining across time, it doesn't need to leave traces here. Because this isn't where it happens. This is where it connects. The witness breaks silence again, and this time there is no delay, no distance. The message arrives almost instantly after the location is identified, as if they've been waiting for this exact moment, watching for this exact realization. You found the edge. Not the center. The edge. And that single correction fractures the assumption completely, because it means everything uncovered so far, the warehouse, the tunnel, the hidden rooms, the routes, they're not leading inward. They're circling something else. Something deeper. Something that hasn't been touched yet. The notebook is reanalyzed again, this time not as a map of movement, but as a map of avoidance, looking not at where it leads, but at where it refuses to go, and that shift in perspective reveals something that had been invisible before, gaps, consistent, deliberate gaps in the sequences. Areas that are never included, never referenced, never crossed. Blind zones. And when those zones are mapped, they overlap in a way that feels impossible to ignore. There is a second center. Hidden not by complexity, but by omission. And this one is not empty. Reaching it isn't straightforward, not because of physical barriers, but because the roots themselves resist it, every known path bending away, redirecting, looping back. As if the system was designed to keep movement away from that point unless you knew exactly how to approach it without following the obvious structure. Which means someone built this to be navigated only by those who understood it completely. Or those who created it. The investigation pushes forward anyway, stepping outside the known sequences, forcing a path that doesn't follow the notebook, doesn't follow the established routes, and that's when the first real resistance appears. Not from people, not directly, but from the environment itself, access denied. Records missing, infrastructure that should be open suddenly restricted, like something is pushing back without ever revealing a source. But they keep going. Because at this point, there's no turning back. And when they finally reach it, the difference is immediate. The space doesn't feel abandoned. It feels maintained. Subtly. Carefully. No obvious signs of activity, no recent footprints, no visible disturbance, but everything is just slightly too clean, too intact, too preserved for a place that should have been forgotten. And then they see it. Not carved. Not scratched. Embedded. The symbol. The same one that anchors the notebook, the same one repeated in the tunnel, the hidden room, the sequences themselves, but here it's different. Larger, deeper, integrated into the structure itself like it was built around it rather than added later. This isn't a marker. It's a foundation. The realization hits with a weight that shifts everything again, because this suggests origin, not extension, a starting point rather than a node, something that predates the roots, the movements, the victims. Something that may have been there before Elena. Before the notebook. Before any of it was documented. And for the first time, the investigation is no longer just uncovering a system. It's confronting its source. The witness doesn't send a message this time. They don't need to. Because their presence is already implied in everything that has led here, every step guided, every misdirection intentional, every reveal timed with precision that no outsider could maintain without being deeply embedded in the structure itself. Which means one thing is becoming harder to deny. The witness isn't just someone who saw what happened. They're someone who understands it. Completely. And that raises the most dangerous possibility yet. They may have been part of it. Not forced. Not accidental. But active. Involved. The room holds that thought in silence, because saying it out loud would change the entire nature of the investigation, from uncovering a hidden system to confronting someone who may still be shaping it from the outside, or worse, from within. And then something shifts. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just enough. A sound. A vibration. A subtle movement beneath the surface, like something adjusting, responding, acknowledging that it has been found, and for a brief moment, the illusion that this was all dormant, all historical, collapses completely. Because this, whatever this is still alive. And now it knows it's no longer hidden. The air changes. The tension sharpens. And somewhere, beyond the reach of light, beyond the edges of the mapped sequences, beyond the parts that have already been uncovered, something is moving, something that has remained untouched for decades, something that has been waiting not to be discovered, but to be reached. The case is no longer about solving a disappearance. It's about understanding a system that was never meant to be seen in full. And now that they're standing at its threshold, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Everything uncovered so far has only been the surface. And what lies beneath it has just begun to respond. The moment the structure responds, everything changes, not in a dramatic collapse, not in some obvious reveal, but in the smallest, most precise ways, the kind that only register if you're already paying attention, the kind that suggest intention rather than malfunction. And that distinction is what sends a chill through everyone in the room, because systems fail randomly, this does not. The vibration stops almost as quickly as it begins, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than before, like the space itself is recalibrating, adjusting to the presence of people who were never meant to reach this point, and for the first time since the case reopened. The investigation doesn't feel like it's chasing something. It feels like it's been noticed. The symbol embedded in the structure becomes the focal point, not just because of its size or placement, but because of what surrounds it, or rather, what doesn't, a perfect clearing in the material, as if everything else was built outward from that exact shape and under closer inspection. Faint seams begin to appear along its edges, lines so subtle they vanish at a glance but become undeniable once traced. It's not just embedded. It's a door. Or something like one. There's no handle, no visible mechanism, no immediate way to interact with it, but the geometry suggests movement, precision engineering hidden beneath decades of concealment, and when tools are brought in, when the surface is tested, measured, scanned. Something even more unsettling emerges. The material isn't consistent with the surrounding structure. It's older. Or newer. Impossible to tell which. The data doesn't align with anything expected. And that alone is enough to confirm what everyone is already beginning to accept. This place was never meant to be understood easily. The notebook is brought back into focus one more time, not for its roots, not for its symbols, but for its repetitions, the sequences that loop, the entries that double back on themselves, the parts that once felt redundant but now begin to look like instructions layered over instructions. Like safeguards, like keys that only make sense when applied in the right context. And one pattern begins to stand out above the rest. A sequence that appears fragmented at first, scattered across pages, disconnected, but when assembled in the right order, forms something new, not a path, not a location, but a rhythm. Intervals. Timing. A pattern of pauses and movements that doesn't map to geography. It maps to action. And when that pattern is tested against the structure itself, when those intervals are mirrored in proximity to the embedded symbol, stepping forward, pausing, shifting position, repeating in the exact sequence dictated by the notebook. Something happens. Not immediately. Not dramatically. But undeniably. A sound. Deep. Internal. A low mechanical shift that reverberates through the walls, through the floor, through the air itself, and the seams around the symbol begin to separate, just slightly, just enough to confirm that this is no illusion, no coincidence, no accident. It was designed to respond. And it just did. The opening is narrow, controlled, revealing darkness beyond it that doesn't reflect light in any natural way, a space that feels less like an extension of the building and more like something carved out separately, deliberately isolated from everything around it. And as the gap widens just enough to allow entry, the decision to proceed doesn't feel like a choice. It feels inevitable. Because this is what everything has been leading to. Every message. Every photograph. Every misdirection. Every correction. All of it pointing here. The descent is slow, measured, each step into the darkness tightening the tension further, because whatever lies beyond this threshold has remained untouched, unseen, for longer than anyone can fully comprehend, and the air inside is different, colder, denser. Carrying none of the decay expected from abandoned space, but instead something sterile, controlled, preserved. And then the walls come into view. Smooth. Deliberate. Covered not in markings, but in absence of them, no symbols, no scratches, nothing to read, nothing to interpret, and that absence feels intentional, like this place exists beyond the need for documentation, beyond the system that operates above it. This is not where the instructions are kept. This is where they originate. The corridor extends further than expected, bending just enough to obscure what lies ahead, and when the space finally opens, it doesn't reveal chaos or decay, or even evidence in the traditional sense. It reveals order. A chamber. Central. Symmetrical. Constructed with precision that feels almost clinical, and at its center. A structure. Not large. But absolute. Surrounded by nothing. Connected to everything. Its surface reflects just enough light to reveal its form, but not enough to fully define it, like it resists being seen clearly, and yet the symbol appears again, not carved this time, not embedded, but integrated, forming part of the structure itself, as if it was never added, only revealed. And around it, objects. Not scattered. Not abandoned. Placed. Carefully. Deliberately. Items that don't belong together in any normal context, drawn from different times, different lives, different moments, and among them, something that stops everything cold. Another photograph. This one older than the rest. This one unmistakable. Elena. Not outside the warehouse. Not near the entrance. But here. Inside this chamber. Standing closer to the central structure than anyone has any right to be. Looking directly toward the camera. And this time, her expression is different. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Something else entirely. Recognition. As if she knew. As if she understood exactly where she was. And what it meant. The implications crash in all at once, because this photograph destroys the last illusion that Elena was simply a victim caught in something beyond her control. It suggests awareness, participation, a level of involvement that reframes everything that came before it. And the timeline fractures under that weight, because if she was here, if she stood in this space, then her disappearance isn't just about what was done to her. It's about what she became part of. The witness breaks the silence again, not with a message, not with a warning, but with something far more direct. A voice. Broadcast. Somehow reaching into the chamber itself, filling the space without a visible source, clear, controlled, closer than it has ever been before. You weren't supposed to get this far. No distortion. No hesitation. Just fact. And then, you still don't understand what you're looking at. The words hang in the air, heavier than anything else that has been uncovered, because they carry a truth that is becoming impossible to ignore. The investigation has been moving forward, yes, uncovering layer after layer, but understanding has not kept pace with discovery. They have found the structure, but they don't yet understand its purpose. And the witness knows that. Intimately. The voice doesn't continue immediately, as if allowing the weight of that realization to settle, to take hold, to force a shift in perspective that cannot be undone, and when it returns, it does so with something new beneath it. Not warning. not guidance. Something closer to inevitability. This wasn't hidden to be forgotten. A pause. Long enough to matter. It was hidden to be followed. The meaning lands slowly, then all at once, because it reframes everything. The notebook, the roots, the symbols, the sequences, none of it was meant to conceal. It was meant to guide. To lead someone here. Eventually. And standing in the center of it, surrounded by evidence that spans decades, possibly longer, one realization begins to take shape, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. This case was never just about solving the past. It was about reaching this moment. And now that they have, the system is no longer waiting. It's ready. For what comes next. The weight in the chamber presses down, not physically, but psychologically, because nothing about this place is ordinary. Every surface, every angle, every object is precise, intentional, designed to communicate without words, to transmit understanding only to those willing to trace its layers, and the investigators realize, with a sudden, cold clarity, that everything they thought was discovery has been a rehearsal. Every letter, every photograph, every hidden room, they've been guided, taught, measured, prepared for this exact entry into the chamber. The voice comes again, but now closer, almost omnipresent, as if it emanates from the walls themselves. You are in the center. This is where choices crystallize. Choices. The word resonates, chilling in its weight, because it implies agency, implication, responsibility, a decision point that the investigators didn't expect to face in what they had imagined as a cold case. They scan the chamber, noting the positions of items, the arrangement of objects, the symmetry of the space, the subtle markings along the floor that create a path toward the central structure, and for the first time, they see it, the flow, the rhythm, the reason behind every prior pattern. It's all aligned with one pulse, one hidden logic, a cadence designed to manipulate perception, to direct thought and movement almost imperceptibly, like a conductor guiding an orchestra without instruments, without sound. And then, as if in response to their recognition, a subtle shift occurs. The central structure hums, almost imperceptibly at first, then with a vibration that resonates through the floor, the walls, the air, a pulse that seems synchronized with the rhythm embedded in the notebook sequences. The investigators freeze. Every instinct tells them this is intentional, and in a chamber so controlled, that pulse is a message, a signal that the system is reacting to their presence, acknowledging it, calibrating, waiting. The voice speaks again. Not all who arrive understand. Few endure. Fewer comprehend. The words slice through the air, not threatening, not harsh, but inevitable, factual, as if pronouncing a law rather than a warning. The room's arrangement, the sequences, the items, the hidden corridors, they're part of a mechanism beyond violence, beyond malice, beyond conventional crime. They are part of a system designed to survive, to endure, to test, to unfold only when approached with sufficient attention and persistence. A photograph rests on a pedestal near the central structure. They approach it cautiously. The image is not recent, it's from decades ago, but unlike the others, it captures more than a moment. Elena stands there, poised, calm, measured. Not as a victim. Not hesitant. Participating. The posture, the gaze, its awareness, control. And then, the second figure, partially visible, looms behind her in shadow, mirroring the silent, observing presence that has haunted every step of the investigation. But there's a third trace, a subtle, almost imperceptible mark on the wall behind them, aligning with the central structure's embedded symbol, indicating position, orientation, function, a hidden instruction that only now can be deciphered. The investigators realize, collectively, that this is not simply about discovery. This chamber is a nexus. Every event, every disappearance, every route traced in the notebook, every hidden room and tunnel, every photograph, every message, they converge here. Not as evidence to solve a crime, but as a framework, a design, a system capable of controlling movement, perception, even understanding. The voice intensifies, layering over itself now, multiple timbres, creating the sensation of omnipresence. You have followed well. You have deciphered. You have arrived. But comprehension is a different weight. Comprehension. The word cuts deeper than any threat could. It is an instruction, a warning, a promise, and the investigators understand. This is where the cold case becomes something else entirely. This is where the past converges with the present, where patterns converge into truth, where witness, victim, observer, and perpetrator are all elements within a single, ongoing system. The air hums. The vibrations grow, almost imperceptibly at first, then steadily, as if the chamber itself pulses in rhythm with the sequences from the notebook. Footsteps echo where no one has moved. Shadows shift without light. The photographs begin to glow faintly, outlines sharpening. The system is alive, adaptive, and it has been waiting for them not as outsiders, not as detectives, not as seekers, but as participants. And then the voice softens, singular now, deliberate. Not what you see matters. What you follow matters. The past is only the first step. The center demands understanding. The investigators glance at each other, words unnecessary. Understanding is not simple. It is not linear. It is not passive. Every layer of the cold case, every photograph, every hidden message, every misdirection. It has been a series of tests, a sequence designed to prepare them for this threshold. And at this moment, standing at the center, the weight of that realization presses down with the force of decades. Something moves. A panel in the wall, previously unnoticed, slides open imperceptibly. Inside, a faint glow reveals objects arranged with obsessive precision. Tools, papers, markers, objects that span decades. And one object in particular catches attention. A journal, thick, bound, worn, its cover embossed with the same symbol that dominates the central structure. It is Elena's handwriting, meticulously detailed, noting sequences, movements, observations, positions, the system she was caught within. Her notes are not frantic. They are methodical, analytical. Participation without resistance. The room feels smaller suddenly, more intimate, more alive. The pulse in the structure aligns with their heartbeats, almost, synchronizing perception with the rhythm of the system itself. And the voice returns, quieter now, direct, almost intimate. She understood. You can too, but only if you relinquish expectation. Only if you see not the crime, but the design. The investigators hesitate, awareness expanding into comprehension, realizing the magnitude of what has been orchestrated over decades. Elena was never merely a victim. She was part of a system, a node, a participant within a design so expansive, so precise, that it has shaped every disappearance, every route, every photograph for over 40 years. And the witness, the long-lost observer, was never merely reporting. They were maintaining, calibrating, guiding, ensuring that the sequences remained intact, that the system endured, that comprehension arrived only when sufficient. The chamber hums louder now, the air thick with unseen energy. Shadows lengthen unnaturally along walls, reflecting angles of past movements, present positions, future possibilities. And then a final whisper, barely audible, yet undeniable. You are at the edge. Beyond lies the pattern itself. Beyond lies choice. Beyond lies comprehension, or dissolution. No one speaks. No one moves. The weight of decades of unsolved mysteries, of letters, tunnels, photographs, hidden rooms, misdirections, all converge into this singular point. The cold case is no longer cold. It is a system, living, reactive, adaptive, and in the center of it all, one truth becomes unavoidable. Understanding Elena's fate is no longer about evidence or investigation. It is about decoding the design itself, stepping fully into the pattern, and confronting the forces that have guided, concealed, and maintained this structure for decades. And somewhere, beyond the pulse of the chamber, the witness waits, silent, unseen, yet omnipresent, knowing that the next move, the comprehension, the choice, the truth, rests entirely with those who now stand inside the system they were never meant to fully see. The chamber exhales a stillness that presses against every nerve, a silence so complete it feels alive, aware, waiting for a response that might never come. Every object, every mark, every photograph now resonates with intention, a language built not to conceal, but to guide, and yet the comprehension required to read it fully feels just beyond reach, like a horizon that recedes the moment you approach. The pulse from the central structure grows steady, insistent, a rhythm that threads through the floor, walls, and air, syncing with the investigators' breaths without their consent, demanding attention, focus, patience, as if testing their resolve. They glance at the photographs again, Elena's face staring back, calm, knowing, and suddenly the case isn't about her disappearance. It's about the choices she made, the path she followed, and the blueprint she became a part of, a node in something far larger than any single person, any single event. Footsteps echo behind them, but no one is there. Shadows shift unnaturally, tracing paths they haven't walked. The room itself seems to move subtly, corridors stretching, angles bending, as if the chamber is a living puzzle, reacting to presence, to awareness. Each item they examine, each photograph they analyze, aligns with invisible sequences, hidden geometries, invisible yet precise. The system is alive, adaptive, aware of observation. A soft click draws their attention to the central structure. A panel slides open, revealing a compartment that was invisible moments before. Inside rests a journal, older than the rest, leather worn smooth, edges frayed by decades of handling. The cover bears the same symbol, deeper, more intricate, integrated with the structure itself. Opening it reveals handwriting that is meticulous, deliberate, observational. Elena's notes, her awareness of patterns, sequences, structures, her participation within the system. She is no longer a victim. She is the link, the interpreter, the node that holds the patterns together. The voice returns, omnipresent now, echoing across the chamber, layered, tense, almost intimate. You have arrived. Comprehension is not granted. It is claimed. The system endures. The choice is yours. The word choice reverberates like a hammer against the mind. Comprehension is no longer passive. Observation alone is insufficient. To understand, to complete what Elena began, the investigators must act, move through the pattern, become participants themselves. They study the sequences, the embedded rhythms, the symbols aligned in the chamber and throughout the city, the tunnels, the hidden rooms. All converge here. It is not chaos. It is not randomness. It is orchestration, a living architecture designed to transmit knowledge, maintain control, and preserve continuity. Every photograph, every misdirection, every witness account is a component, a calibration, a test. Elena passed. Now it is their turn. The central structure hums louder, responding to their awareness, the pulse intensifying, shadows twisting, light bending in impossible angles. The chamber becomes a conduit, not just for observation, but for participation. Each movement, each glance, each breath aligns them with the system, threading them into the design they never understood existed. The voice softens, almost gentle, but layered with authority. You are at the center. You see. You understand some. But to truly comprehend is to follow the pattern, to accept its demands, to recognize that the cold case is not cold, it is alive. It shapes, it waits. It tests. And it endures beyond time, beyond disappearance, beyond observation. Silence follows, heavy, deliberate. The air itself seems charged with expectation. The pulse slows, not ceasing, but steadying, like a heartbeat marking a threshold. Every sequence from the notebook, every route, every hidden room, every photograph. Each is a key, each a test, each a step toward the ultimate understanding that has been withheld for decades. And then, for the first time, the investigators see the pattern fully, not a series of events, not a collection of clues, but a system of sequences, rhythms, nodes, and connections, a living architecture that Elena navigated, that the witness maintained, that they themselves are now stepping into. The truth is no longer about crime. It is about structure, choice, comprehension. The chamber waits. The system waits. The pulse continues, subtle yet unyielding, a reminder that discovery is not completion, and comprehension is never guaranteed. And standing at the center, surrounded by decades of secrets, photographs, notes, and embedded symbols, one undeniable truth emerges. The cold case is no longer a past event. It is a living, breathing system, and anyone who approaches it fully, anyone who follows its sequences, anyone who steps into the pattern, will be changed irrevocably. The last whisper drifts through the chamber, barely audible but impossible to ignore. The witness is not here. The system is. And it will endure. Elena understood. You may too, but only if you accept that the past was never the point. The point was the path, and the path is infinite. And with that, the chamber exhales once more, the pulse steady, the symbols glowing faintly in response, the patterns waiting, watching, and the realization settles, chilling and undeniable. The cold case is not solved, not in any conventional sense. It is ongoing, alive, and those who have reached the center are no longer outside of it. They are now inside, participants in a design that transcends time, observation, and even understanding itself. The system waits. The chamber hums. The choice begins. The pulse lingers, steady, omnipresent, vibrating through every fiber of the chamber, syncing subtly with heartbeats, breaths, the nervous tension of those who have entered, and the realization hits with quiet brutality. The chamber is alive in a way no one anticipated. It does not merely contain history. It contains control, structure, guidance, a deliberate orchestration of perception across decades, unseen yet precise, a system that measures, tests, waits, and only now allows interaction. Every object, every photograph, every hidden note previously uncovered elsewhere in the city, the warehouse, the tunnels, the hidden rooms, they were all prelude, scaffolding to this moment. The notebook, Elena's handwriting, the symbols embedded in walls, the sequences traced across streets, all were not meant to be final evidence. They were invitations, tests, instructions. And now, standing at the chamber center, the investigators feel that the tests are over, and the instructions begin. A faint vibration runs along the floorboards, almost imperceptible, then intensifying, as if the chamber itself is drawing them forward, guiding each step. Shadows twist unnaturally, angles bending, lines of light revealing paths invisible moments before. The voice returns, calm, deliberate, omniscient. Observation is not comprehension. Following is not understanding. To see the system, you must participate in its rhythm. They look at the central structure, now glowing faintly, and notice small shifts along its surface. Panels adjusting, symbols aligning differently, an almost imperceptible motion signaling invitation, acknowledgement, a kind of recognition that the chamber reacts only to awareness, only to presence. Only to those willing to step fully into the design. A single photograph rests upon the pedestal, Elena's image from decades ago, her gaze calm, knowing, as if aware of everything before, everything after. Behind her, faint shadows hint at another presence, the long-lost witness, perhaps, unseen but orchestrating every response, every movement. A journal lies beside it, heavier, older, embossed with the symbol embedded in the structure. Opening it reveals meticulous notes, sequences traced, observations recorded, rhythms mapped, the blueprint of a system that is no longer abstract, it is tangible. The voice continues, layered now, echoing, overlapping, omnipresent. This was never a cold case. It was never a disappearance. It was preparation. System. Pattern. Sequence. Comprehension awaits those who can endure the weight of the design. The words are not a warning. They are instruction, inevitability, a challenge to understand the scale, the precision, the persistence of what has been built over decades. Every pulse, every vibration, every faint shift in shadow aligns with sequences in Elena's notebook. Each object is placed intentionally, each photograph oriented precisely. The chamber itself is a node within a larger system, a living architecture that spans the city, decades, disappearances, witnesses, sequences. It responds to understanding, not brute force, to awareness, not luck. Every movement they make threads them deeper into the pattern. The investigators feel it, the weight, the pull, the inevitable draw toward comprehension. Elena's presence is everywhere in this system. The photographs, the sequences, the journals. But comprehension is not linear. The witness, long lost yet omnipresent, has guided them here not merely to observe, but to recognize their own role, their own participation. They are no longer outside the pattern, they are inside it. Then the final message arrives, not words, not voice, but a subtle shift in the central structure itself. A panel opens silently, revealing a narrow passage leading deeper into darkness. Faint light glows from within, symbols etched along the edges. The voice speaks one last time. To understand is to follow. The system waits. It endures. The path is infinite. The choice is yours. The chamber pulses again, in perfect rhythm, synchronized with the investigators' heartbeats, breaths, attention. They step forward into the passage, knowing instinctively that what lies ahead will challenge everything they thought they knew about the case, about Elena, about the witness. The cold case is no longer history. It is a living structure, a system alive across decades, and every step forward threads them further into its design. There is no turning back. Observation has become participation. Discovery has become understanding. And somewhere, far beyond the chamber's walls, the system continues, waiting, watching, enduring, infinite in its reach, precise in its control. The pulse continues. The shadows shift. The sequence unfolds. And those who enter the heart of the design realize, with chilling clarity, that this is only the beginning. The cold case is no longer cold. It is alive. It is eternal. It is watching. The narrow passage swallows them, the walls pressing close as if the building itself exhales and contracts, guiding their steps, demanding precision, demanding awareness. The pulse from the central structure behind them follows, faint yet insistent, threading through the floor, echoing in the bones, sinking subtly with every heartbeat, a rhythm that insists on attention. This is no longer exploration. It is traversal, a participation in a pattern designed for those who understand sequence, timing, and consequence. Faint symbols appear along the passage walls, etched with a precision that feels ancient, deliberate, almost surgical. They are subtle, easy to miss, yet impossible to ignore once noticed. Each symbol resonates with entries in Elena's journal, each marking a pause, a shift, a movement in a rhythm that has been repeated countless times across the city, across decades. The realization hits: the chamber was not the center. It was a threshold, a testing ground. This passage is the conduit, the active vein of the system, alive and responsive, guiding them forward only because they have demonstrated comprehension. A shadow flickers ahead. No, not shadow, a presence, unconfirmed, peripheral, moving in tandem with the passage, staying just beyond sight, reacting to each footstep, every glance. The long-lost witness, perhaps, or the echo of them embedded in the system itself, an intelligence preserved in sequences, symbols, and rhythms. The air thickens, electric, expectant. Silence becomes weighty, oppressive, as if even sound has been measured, timed, accounted for. Then the structure changes. A subtle vibration runs along the walls, more distinct, almost deliberate, and a soft light begins to glow along the floor, illuminating a path previously invisible. The pulse of the chamber behind them aligns, faintly, rhythmically, as if guiding them forward. The investigators realize they are not walking blindly, they are following the system's cadence. Misstep is impossible only if they maintain attention. Deviation is both warning and consequence. The passage widens into a chamber unlike any before, larger, vaulted, walls smooth, symmetrical, untouched by time. The pulse grows stronger, harmonizing with the low hum of the chamber itself, and in the center, a platform rises slightly above the floor, inscribed with the same symbol embedded in the previous central structure. It dominates the room without aggression, commanding attention, integrating past and present, sequence and rhythm. On the platform rests a collection of items, artifacts spanning decades, each one carefully preserved, placed with intent. Tools, photographs, journals, letters, all the remnants of the system's history. And there, in the center, an object that halts their breath, a small, sealed envelope, unmarked except for a symbol identical to the one that has guided every step. The handwriting inside matches Elena's, her meticulous precision, her awareness of the pattern, her participation in the design. The voice returns, omnipresent, calm, inescapable. This is the heart. Here, comprehension meets consequence. What has been followed now must be understood. The pattern endures beyond time, beyond disappearance, beyond witness. To see fully is to accept participation. They approach the platform. Each step resonates, aligning them further with the system, threading them into sequences they cannot yet fully decipher, and the envelope pulses subtly in response to presence, a heartbeat within a heartbeat, a signal that the system itself is acknowledging their arrival, their comprehension, their readiness to proceed. Opening the envelope, they find a series of notes, meticulously written, sequences layered atop sequences, mapping movement, timing, decisions, instructions embedded in rhythm. Elena's hand guides them, not as victim, not as observed, but as architect, interpreter, participant. Every entry anticipates questions before they arise, every instruction anticipates hesitation, every sequence anticipates the observer. The pulse of the chamber grows, synchronizing not only with their steps, but with their understanding. The walls vibrate faintly, shadows elongate, light bends subtly, as if the chamber itself is alive to cognition, reacting to insight. The investigators feel themselves drawn into the rhythm, the cadence, the system, no longer merely observers, but participants in the design that has endured for decades, guiding, shaping, testing. The voice speaks once more, final, deliberate. The path was never linear. The cold case is not solved. It is alive. It endures. You are inside the pattern now. All comprehension is choice. All choice is consequence. The system waits. Forever, until understood. Or ignored. Silence falls, absolute, expectant, as if the chamber itself breathes. The pulse continues. The envelope rests open, sequences unfurling, rhythms guiding. The investigation has transcended past and present. It is no longer merely about Elena, the witness, or the disappearances. It is about engaging with the design itself, accepting its demands, threading oneself into the infinite pattern. The cold case is alive. The system endures. And in the chamber's heartbeat, the investigators realize one chilling truth. Understanding comes not with observation, but with participation. The pulse continues. The shadows shift. The rhythm waits. The sequence unfolds. And the path, eternal, deliberate, infinite, has only just begun. The passage narrows again, almost imperceptibly, guiding them forward with subtle shifts in floor and wall, as if the building itself breathes, contracts, and responds. Every footstep, every glance, every measured pause is noted by the system, acknowledged, integrated. It is no longer about exploration. It is about synchronization, alignment, becoming a part of something far larger than a single cold case, far larger than the city itself. Faint symbols, etched with precision centuries apart from chance, appear along the walls, glowing softly in rhythm with the pulse that threads through the chamber. They are instructions, sequences, markers, each one anticipating the observer's comprehension, testing the attention of those who step too quickly or linger too long. Here, in the threshold beyond the central chamber, the system begins to demand more than observation. It demands understanding, not of events, but of patterns, not of victims, but of design. A shadow flickers, or perhaps it moves deliberately. Presence feels real, but impossible to locate. The long-lost witness, or the echo of their intelligence embedded in the system, follows silently, their awareness encoded in the rhythm of the space. The investigators feel eyes on them, not physically, but mentally, a weight of scrutiny and guidance that tightens with every heartbeat. The walls seem to stretch as they proceed, corridors lengthening subtly, angles bending imperceptibly, spaces folding into one another, a geometry alive with purpose. And as the rhythm grows stronger, a new chamber emerges, wider, vaulted, symmetrical, untouched by time yet impossibly engineered, as if removed from chronology. At its center stands a platform, a culmination, a node integrating decades of sequences, photographs, journals, and hidden messages. Upon the platform rests a singular object, a metallic case, smooth, cold, unmarked save for the recurring symbol that has guided them for 47 years. The pulse of the chamber resonates with it, a heartbeat synchronized to the rhythm of comprehension. Opening it reveals a set of meticulously organized documents, photographs, and tools, layered in sequence, each one corresponding to prior discoveries. Hidden rooms, tunnels, letters, photographs, and symbols. Elena's hand is evident throughout, her awareness and participation embedded in every note, every alignment, every sequence. The voice returns, omnipresent, layered, insistent. Observation alone grants nothing. Comprehension requires alignment. Participation is choice. Choice is consequence. The system waits for recognition, not interrogation. The path is infinite. Understanding is conditional. All else is illusion. They study the documents. Symbols overlay symbols, sequences intersect sequences, rhythms encode movement, timing, choice. The cold case, once imagined as a linear investigation, now reveals itself as a living structure, a system spanning time, space, and intention. Every disappearance, every route, every photograph, every witness, every hidden note, all are components of a design meant to endure, adaptive, aware, reactive. A vibration courses along the walls, a pulse stronger than before, echoing through floor and ceiling, resonating with their own heartbeats. Shadows lengthen, light bends, and the investigators feel themselves threaded into the system, no longer observers but active participants, moving in rhythm with sequences they barely comprehend. Every misstep risks dissonance, every hesitation is noted. Then, at the far end of the chamber, a faint glow emerges, a corridor, narrow, precise, appearing only in reaction to their synchronization. The voice, softer now, intimate yet omnipresent, speaks. The chamber is threshold. The platform is node. The pulse is path. Comprehension lies beyond alignment. You have arrived. Now, step forward fully. They approach the corridor. The walls seem to shift slightly, accommodating presence, guiding, folding time and space into the rhythm of the system. Elena's photograph appears faintly etched along the wall, her gaze calm, deliberate, acknowledging. The realization strikes with chilling clarity. She was never merely a participant. She was an orchestrator, interpreter, guide, a node ensuring the system endured across decades. The pulse grows, synchronizing further with their movement, their awareness. The system itself seems to breathe through them, testing, observing, adapting. And in that synchronized rhythm, the final truth begins to crystallize. The cold case is not a historical artifact. It is a living, breathing architecture of control, perception, and pattern, designed to endure, to guide, to test, and now, it has claimed those who have followed it fully. The corridor stretches ahead, shadows folding, symbols glowing, rhythm pulsating. The choice is theirs. To observe, to comprehend, to participate, or to halt and remain outside the system, forever unaware of its full design. And in the pulse, the hum, the subtle vibration threading through walls, floor, and mind, the investigators understand, there is no turning back. The system is alive. The cold case is alive. And beyond the corridor, the infinite pattern waits, patient, precise, eternal. The pulse continues. The shadows shift. The rhythm endures. The path stretches beyond comprehension. And those who step forward are no longer merely seekers. They are participants in a system that transcends time, observation, and the very concept of resolution. The cold case is alive. The sequence unfolds. The choice begins.